What's your preferred U-turn, the J-turn or the kickstand pivot?
The J turn, I guess.
What's more challenging, double logs or rock gardens?
Double logs, depending on how hot the log is.
Would you rather do a slow race or a full lock figure eight turn?
Probably a slow race, I guess.
Which is tougher, riding 12-inch ruts or crossing 12-inch logs at an angle?
I would say riding 12-inch ruts.
Which is harder extraction, axle deep mud or pegs stuck on a hillside route?
They're so dependent on where you're at and how the bike is. I mean, I would say axle deep ruts. Andy Janik, I'm with Heavy Enduro.
Welcome to Moto Adventure Unscripted, a weekly podcast about motorcycles, outdoors, and adventure. I'm Drew Faulkner, your host, and joining me today is Andy Janik as we unpack essential ADV riding skills. So we're going to talk about body position, how to set up your bike, certain low speed and balance techniques, importance of how to properly brake off-road, and a whole lot more. As usual, we want to hear from you, the listeners. Leave a comment here on Spotify. Send us email, motoadvr@gmail.com. Wherever you're listening, grab your beverage of choice, turn it up. We hope you enjoy the show. Awesome. All right. Anything else before we get started, sir?
No, man. How was your weekend?
My weekend has been wild. I want to talk about some, we'll say, essential ADV riding skills with you, which is a frequent topic we like to cover.
Does that have to do with what you did on your weekend?
Actually, it does. It's funny because I have not unpacked it on the podcast yet. So hopefully,
are you willing to unpack it on the podcast?
Hopefully. This doesn't become a negative thing that by the time this podcast airs, I think have taken my test. So we'll find out whether or not I get to become a motorcycle basic rider course instructor or not. So, but yeah, I have been training now for the past 4 or 5 weeks to become a basic rider course instructor for the state. So we'll see how that goes.
How is it going? Is my first question, and my second question is how, because I've been a part of some of these training courses through the States, how do you feel like about some of the advice that they give?
That's a fun topic, which would be relevant regardless of whether or not I pass. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I do not like the way the course is initially taught. That shouldn't be surprising. I have really strong opinions on training and teaching after being in the military, combined with I'm typically a kinesthetic repetition learner. If I have a choice to do it, I'm going to do it because it sticks. I can usually do something once and remember how to do it a second time. If you're going to sit in a classroom and you're going to talk at me, or as the state likes to teach it, because they're teaching adults, they like to use a lot of questions and like let you read and figure it out, but they never really give you firm answers and things stay super vague. So that tends to be somewhat aggravating to me. So that stuff has been tough. I get why they do it because people learn differently and they need as many people as they can get. So it works there. As far as lessons are concerned, I'm pretty solid behind the concept of the curriculum. If you're taking someone who's never ridden a motorcycle before, I agree with you really should practice only doing one thing at a time. You really should brake in a straight line, and you really should enter corners at a speed that you can actually navigate them so that you don't brake in a corner and all those things. But as skills build up, all those rules, I don't want to say go out the window, okay, but they become less relevant, right?
Now, everything that you're doing is all like intro to road. It's not the
right.
Off-road class that
right.
they're doing for, what is it, MSF or whatever?
Correct. Ohio does have a dirt bike school. I don't entirely know what's taught in it. I wanted to go to it years ago, but it's really tough to get in. Location, limited time, limited instructors, lots of stuff. But
okay, yeah, because the last time I took the Illinois riding course was when I was like 16 or 17, mm-hmm. right? And the motorcycle course, and it was on the TTR 125s, the big wheels, which was really fun. And then I was having too much fun on that, and somebody else was struggling, so they took me off that and put me on a Honda Rebel with like huge crash bars, which was hilarious because I just kept dragging the crash bars on the ground and getting yelled at. So I don't have much experience with those. I have recent experience with like the new MSF safety, like adventure off-road type program. And I felt like there was some stuff that I really agreed with and some stuff that I didn't. I felt like they threw you into a couple of things like too quickly, too fast. Like specifically there was a drill where you're supposed to like accelerate as fast as you can, and then there's supposed to be an obstacle and you're supposed to like slam on the brakes, skid the rear tire, and then slide around the obstacle. And I was like, yeah, this isn't really beginner.
I was about to say, I'm not real sure on the practicality of that because I'm trying to think of times that I've used that.
And then they were trying to tell me, they were like, well, your class is way more aggressive. And I was like, we don't do this. This seems very aggressive. But so we had a slight, I would say, not seeing of eye to eye in that one scenario. I felt like they were moving too quickly with the class. So that's interesting.
Yeah, here in Ohio, it's a 2-day course. I think it's 7 hours. Well, you have a 4-hour classroom on a weeknight usually, and then you have I think it's 2 6 or 2 7-hour days, Saturday, Sunday. So yeah, it's eight exercises Saturday, 8 exercises Sunday, and then a test.
So it's mostly riding?
Oh, 100%.
It's not as much book work. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Like when I did mine years and years and years ago, it was a lot of book work and I think only like 1 day of riding.
yeah, it's definitely range stuff, and that's the thing is like I love the range stuff. I love teaching and being on the course, and we had our first students over the weekend.
I guess you're an instructor, so
Right.
yours is a little bit different. You're not going through the main course. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we still have to teach all the PowerPoint slides and go through the workbook with the students. They have a written test they have to take, written test, so to speak, but it's all from the book, right? But you have to memorize. God, it's like, I shouldn't say memorize. You end up going through 60, 70 slides or whatever it is. So you do a lot of talking and changing slides and have to kind of know what to say and stuff. And that's the stuff that's, to me, it's a little harder to remember. Whereas the range stuff is mechanics, and it means riding some demonstrations and stuff. I've been running around the range on a KLX 230, so I'm a kid in the candy store because I enjoy that bike out of the little 250s they have to choose from. They got a Van 200. I'm like, oh, why did they stop making this? This bike is fun. So yeah, that stuff's good.
Susan just had to re-up her M endorsement, and so you have to take the written test again. Not the riding test, but the written test, which I think is really backwards. I feel like you should have to take the writing test, not the written test, but that doesn't make sense to me. But she literally brought me home a book because she was like, you're definitely going to fail this. There's some stuff on here that like is worded funny and doesn't make sense. And when you actually ride a motorcycle, you'd be like, why would you ever do that? But for whatever reason, that's just the way the test questions are. And she's like, yeah, if you don't study this, you're for sure going to fail.
I mean, I don't know how many listeners. Hopefully, we have listeners that are tuning in that have never.
Hopefully, we have
motorcycle.
listeners. Period.
Yes, 100%. That they're tuning in and are thinking about getting their license. But share it with your friends that here in Ohio, there's a lot of tests like what is the legal blood alcohol limit for anyone under 21. And when you're 30, 40 years old taking the test to get your permit, you don't remember any of that stuff. And it's like some ridiculous number. And most of those answers are not in your get your motorcycle permit study guide. You have to go back to the get your driver's license study guide and find those answers. Yeah, it's a real pain in the ass. It's it's almost half the test is actually out of the driver's test portion of the study guide. So a lot of people go and pick up their little ride a motorcycle study guide from the state, from the BMV, and then later find out that there's a bunch of driver's license related stuff on there for cars and traffic and other stuff. And it makes it tough.
Interesting. It makes me wonder what it's like in other countries, because I know in like Europe and stuff, your classes are tiered by like CCs. So like from this age to this age, you're only allowed like this many CCs, and from this age to this age, and so on. And versus in America, it's like, oh, I can be 16 and go out and buy a Busa or a Gixxer 1000 and literally just do 190 on the highway and die. So I'm curious to see what those tests are like there.
I am equally fascinated by that because I think they actually have someone ride behind you. Like you're graded. You have like a road test on a motorcycle in a lot of non-American countries, right? Well, non-American countries anyway, and countries other than America. I think that there's a lot of places where you literally are chased by somebody that's grading you as you're riding.
I feel like I'm not so much worried about that in motorcycles, but having RVs and driving RVs and seeing people with RVs, I feel like people with RVs need that. I feel like the RV community, like, there's been two instances where our RV was hit by someone else driving another RV, and both times we were completely stationary, and they did not know how to maneuver a vehicle or have anyone watch. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more training. I'm more worried about people in RVs than I am on people in motorcycles. Let's be honest.
I mean, it's a much larger conversation, right? Because I've said forever, I wish I would have grown up riding dirt bikes because I would have been a better motorcyclist.
Yeah.
And that I think that concept exists everywhere, right? Like when kids grew up driving the tractor, because that's what it took to get the farm running. Like people understood horsepower and consequences and danger. And I'm like, now it's like, nah, you just turn 16 and you just get in the SUV that your parents handed down to you, and you have no idea that you have a 4-ton killing machine. Like it's totally cool.
That's fair.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of America. I'm not, obviously, I oppose a lot of the, we need to make a million laws for things, but that's a different podcast. But at the same time, I'm not dumb. I recognize, like, no, lack of experience is mostly what our problem is here, right?
Yeah. Well, and consequences.
Speaking of experience, it looks like you've been doing some traveling lately, sir. Not that that's
Yeah,
news when
let's
you're on the
see
show.
what we went to Moab and watched the Moab Hard Enduro. That was a lot of fun. It's one thing to see it like on TV or like watch lessons or something about it, but it's a whole other thing to like watch it happen live in person. And the Moab Hard Enduro one's pretty cool because it's so open, and there's this whole one area called Black Flag where it's this giant valley, and you can just climb around all over the place and watch people get rowdy, basically. So that was super fun. And then we went home. Susan stayed and she rode a little bit. I came back, and we did the Moscow Moto event, which is a lot of fun because it's at the same venue. It's I forget what the venue's called. It's off the tip of my tongue right now, but there's a venue there, and it's the same venue both times. So basically, like the next weekend at the Moscow Motor Ride, you could ride basically the same tracks if
rad.
you wanted to, from the Moab Hard Enduro, which was super cool. It's called Area BFE, and they're really nice over there. So that area is really, really neat. So we got to ride with Corey, and we got to ride with Tyson, and we got to ride with some of the Moscow crew, and obviously Susan was there, and we got to ride with Killian Moreno, which he's super nice, really talented guy, super fun to be around. So yeah, that was cool. I got to try one of Moscow's new packs out, that the Ape Cat.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the Wolf Pack, but it's like a waist pack, but with shoulder straps, which I really liked, actually. So I got to try one of those out for the weekend, brought the weight down lower, and it was a little more like mobile. I had more like freedom of movement. I didn't feel so limited, and the weight was lower on me. So when I like hunched over to get in like an attack riding position, and my, my water bladder would be like up here on my back, kind of like causing back strain. Instead, I just had like a water bladder like on my hips, which was a lot easier to deal with. And surprisingly, I thought it would have less room, and it still had just about the same amount of room, if not more. So that was cool. And then came home, and then this last weekend we went out with Seth and his family in Austin. Austin. And we went to Michigan and did some sand riding and some tight single track and trails and stuff. So that was super fun. We went to leave Friday night, and it was pretty interesting because we're all loaded. We're ready to go. It was like 9 o'clock. I'm like, finally, we're getting on the road. It's 4 hours to the camp, and then we're going to, hang out there for the night. And I go to pull out, and my backup camera is like not working on the RV. And what is going on? So I'm like turning it on, turning it off, and restarting the truck. And then I realized the RV lights aren't on. Like we checked the brake lights and the turn signals, but we didn't actually check the running lights, and the running lights weren't working. And I was like, what the heck is going on? It's a brand new trailer. We just picked it up. Like the running lights were working. So I start pulling things apart, and on the Ram, there's a connector for where you put the 7-way
Yeah.
in, and then that connector plugs into the harness of the truck. So I pulled that off, and I was only getting like 9 volts at the connector at the 7-pin. So
Yeah.
I pulled that off. I was only getting 9 volts there. And then I traced that back in the wiring harness, which was like 6 feet long, the whole bumper with like 10 other connectors on it for sensors. And of course, that next connector, it was right there. I had 12 volts on this side and I had 9 volts on this side. I was like, ah, crap, this connector's bad. So it's like 10 o'clock at night and I'm crawling around on the ground with a voltmeter trying to find out what's wrong. I finally figured out it's somewhere in this harness, like that's like 6 feet long with 10 connectors on it. So I'm like, I'm going to pull it off, take it inside, test it on the bench, see if I can just run a new wire, splice something in. And I'm trying to get it off, but it was snaked in the body and I couldn't get it out. So then I started unwrapping like the connectors and the wires. And I for sure found like a slice in one of the wires and it
Somebody
had
nicked
corroded,
yeah.
rotted. And it was full of sand. Like somebody was off-roading, like packed the whole harness full of sand. So I was able to like find the problem. I went to bed at like 11:30 because I was wiped. Woke up at like 6, grabbed some connectors, crimped a connector on, heat shrinked it, tested it, and I was good to go. And we left the next day. So that was a whole fiasco. I was so pissed.
Yeah, I mean, it's relevant to listeners. Obviously, it's not about techniques and skills, but for troubleshooting wise, I can hear this story on the trail side in a motorcycle. Like that entire story would make perfect sense for
like
silly stuff.
kickstands. How many times has somebody bashed a kickstand switch on the trail and they're like trying to figure out why their bike won't start or why it won't turn on, or like a clutch perch switch, for a neutral safety switch. They fall down and they bust the clutch perch switch and now the bike doesn't want to start whether it's in gear or not. So it's a relevant problem to be able to diagnose stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm terrible at electrical and somehow I figured it out.
No, it's funny you said that about kickstand switch. I still can't believe that a piece of gravel from my front wheel hit my kickstand switch on the Tenere and broke it. I disabled the kickstand switch on my Tenere within less than 10,000 miles. I took it off my scrambler at like 80. Like, it's so crazy to me.
So the Adam just showed me there's 2 pins that go into the harness and you can pull them out and you can jumper them together and that'll disable the kickstand switch and the clutch switch, and it won't force it into limp mode anymore. Because when you're pulling the clutch on the Tenere, it forces into that like limp mode. It's not a limp mode, but it's like a neutral map.
Yeah,
it's a worse running map for emissions, right? And there's this spot in the harness where if you just jump 2 wires together, it eliminates both those things. I just learned out about it yesterday.
I might talk to him about that at some point. Truthfully, my clutch switch on the Triumph is going to die, and I'm eventually going to have to jumper that out, but we'll get to that. Real quick, before we get into, I guess, rider skills, what bikes were you riding out at Moab and then in Michigan?
I took the Tenere and then my 252 stroke. I didn't really ride the 252 stroke much because I just really liked the Tenere. And there was just a lot of fun stuff that I wanted to do, and I made some adjustments to the suspension on the Tenere that I wanted to try out, and they ended up being like phenomenal. I've got that bike to a point where it's hard to imagine it much better than it is. I mean, I was just bunny hopping up stuff, and the bike just felt like it was on a cloud of air. Like before, it always felt a little like kind of tail draggy.
Yeah.
And we put an extreme. I basically, to make a long story short, we put the MXX suspension on it, and I had 260 front travel and like 215 rear travel, and it always felt like the back was a little bit low, and it was a little bit off balance. So we did some research, and I ordered the Extreme/WR linkage from Europe because you couldn't get them here at all.
Yeah.
So I ordered 3 of them. It cost me like $1,000 plus tariffs to get 3 of them, and they come bare with no bearings and no bushings. It's another like $200 to buy bearings and bushings per unit. And we sent one I put one on my bike. We tried it out, and then Adam built me a longer shock.
Yeah.
To be able to use the new linkage that has a taller ratio. So I have like 225 travel now, and it gives you like a more, because it's a higher ratio, it gives you more of like a plush feeling, right? It's more progressive, and it balanced the bike out, and it's phenomenal. And since then, I sent one of those linkages to Adam, and they 3D scanned it, and then they built their own. So you can actually buy an extreme WR linkage built by MX Tech
Yeah.
in the US with the Heavy Enduro MX Tech logo on it for like half the price of what you can order one from Europe for, because you still can't buy them in the US yet.
Right. How much taller does that make your Tenere?
I think
Than stock.
overall it didn't actually make it that much taller. I need to measure seat heights because the way that the linkage ratio works, it gives you more travel without more seat height. But we did make the shock. I think the overall travel is like 10 mil more than we had before. So it's not much higher than you think. And because I was able to raise the back end, I was actually able to slide the forks up in the tubes
Yeah.
like 5 millimeters. And it's absolutely perfect. Like when I was in Arizona like 3 months ago, and I had the tubes like all the way down, and I had the shock fairly stiff because I was doing LAB2V, which was a
Yeah.
lot faster. It felt good. It felt raked out. It felt like I had a longer wheelbase. It felt stable. And then once I started going to Moab and I started doing like the tighter, more technical stuff where I wanted the bike to be lighter and nimbler and the front end to feel like it popped a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And I wanted a tighter turning radius, I slid the forks up literally just 5 millimeters. And just completely changed the bike. It turned very lively and very, like the front end was just very light, which was pretty cool. So it's impressive how big of a difference as small of a change as 5 millimeters is for sliding the forks up or down. It's like absolutely night and day on the way the bike handled.
No, it's something I love about dirt bikes that I think a lot of novice folks underestimate, that you can really change the way a bike behaves. So, did you ride the Cove in either of those places?
No, so the Cove is getting, Susan's got her Cove in the garage. Adam is going through the suspension. We're trying to build an MX Tech shock for it.
Nice.
So the hard part with that shock is it's a 50 mil body, which is the biggest body you can get for size wise, and it's got a huge shaft on it. So it's this enormous shock that's got a lot of travel and a lot of beef to it. But then the reservoir is like tiny. It's like this little pea shooter. And the problem is because the fuel tank is under the seat, the way that they shape the fuel tank, there's literally like no room at all for a shock reservoir anywhere.
Yeah.
So they put it on the side, and it's so tiny because the chain rides like right next to the shock reservoir, like right here. And if that chain gets loose at all, it'll actually like dig into the shock body. So a lot of guys have been overheating them. And Corey actually put like a tube on it with a second reservoir, like a remote reservoir farther back, and he's had really good luck with that. But he's rebuilding Susan's shock, and he's getting all the dimensions from the shock and the fork, and then we're going to put it all back on the bike, and then I'm going to send to him. They're going to 3D scan that area, and they're going to take some of their existing shock bodies, because we tried probably 5 or 6 existing shock bodies, and none of them would fit in there because it's just so cramped. And they're probably going to just design a custom shock body with a reservoir that goes where they need it to go, to try and make it fit. And then I also have, the boost intake I have on my Tenere, which is amazing.
It sounds amazing, if nothing else. I will tell everybody that right now.
It's phenomenal. Well, you wrote it.
100%.
Right after he finished the Tenere, he started designing one for the Cove, and then he was messaging me about it. And so I was giving him some feedback and helping him make some kind of like tunes and tweaks to it based on the feedback that I had from the last one. And so he released the one for the Cove, 3 weeks ago, and he's sending me one for the Cove now too. So now I'll have a boost intake for the Cove, which is sweet because it'll be this. The hard part with the Cove is it's like a cartridge filter that slides in from the top, and you literally have this like hole like this big. So if you get any dirt or dust in there, you like can't get in there to clean it. Versus the boost is going to be like the whole front of it, instead of it being a cartridge, is the same GYTR style filter off my Tenere. So I can pull it off, and if there's anything in there, I can easily like clean it out and get to it. So it should be a substantial upgrade to what we have now. I actually sent them to Gary, and I think Gary's going to order a whole bunch of them and keep them in the Cove USA site. So yeah, needless to say, Susan's bike has been suspenderless for a couple of months because we've donated to the R&D development center that is MX Tech.
It's yeah, you gotta pay for that suspension somehow. It's mind blowing to me, experiencing that on a Tenere. So, those guys do incredible work for the listeners' benefit. It is MX Tech makes amazing shit for T7s and 890s, and they've pretty much all the hot
Yeah.
middleweights right now.
So
You
they
can
have
get
an
stuff.
890 shock that just finally came out, and then for the forks, they just throw cartridges in there because the stock they're Explorer forks,
Right.
so the same forks off the dirt bike. So literally, with a set of cartridges, you can get 270 mil rally length travel, like out of a stock 240 mil length 890 fork, and then the shock is just way better. So Radek actually tested the prototype shocks, and he's like, "This is the best shock I've ever ridden." He ordered 2 of them for Romaniacs. So, which says a lot because he ordered the basically off of a prototype.
Yep.
He just ordered 2. So I think he already sold 4 to the guys in Canada already. Pretty much anybody who's ridden it has been like, "I want this."
Oh,
And now we're working on the Cove. So
I feel like
the
you and
Cove-
I talked about it last fall, but yeah, I was like that. I've never felt so fast off road, short of riding my 350. Like that bike with that suspension is stupid.
suspension is everything, and the changes again are everything. Another thing that like this weekend, like I was riding on my Triumph, and I felt like I like just couldn't come into the turns. I felt like the front end just kept washing out on me. Same thing. I just slid the forks up a little bit in the tubes, 5 millimeters, or in the triples, 5 millimeters, and I stiffened the shock a little bit to kind of raise it up a little bit, and absolutely like night and day. I went
Yeah.
from like feeling like I didn't know how to ride to feeling like I could just rail through these turns like without problem. There's a couple other things I did differently, and we'll go over that a little bit later because that has to do with kind of body position and fundamentals and braking and all that fun stuff.
That's a segue that I'm going to take, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do. Yeah. I want to talk about. We can breeze through bike setup a little bit more because we've definitely talked bike setup in previous episode, and I could put a
You're
link
looking
to
for
that.
bike setup, go back to podcast number, insert podcast number here.
Yes.
And you can listen to it there.
Yeah, we've got that. I'll put a link in the show notes. But I want a little bit about body position because I don't think we unpack that quite as deep. But definitely stuff like low speed control, balance, braking, hill climbs, getting unstuck, trail vision, cornering, traction management, big mistakes. So those are the hot hitters I want to try to do here while we still have some time. So if you wanna pick it up with body position, is that where you want to start? Or sorry, run through bike setup real quick.
I mean, bike setup is obviously. I think we've gone over this pretty thoroughly in other podcasts before. So real briefly, you want to make it so you can be standing in an attack position. Your heels dropped, your legs straight. You're hinging at your hips, and your chest is over the front of the bike in like a nice attack position. You want to have your elbows up, and you want to have it so you can get to those levers. You can get to that front brake. You can get to that clutch lever. You want to have that shift lever and that rear brake lever pretty high, so you can just kind of bop your foot forward, and you can shift up or shift down, and you can hit that brake. If you're riding and you're sitting on the peg and your heel is dropped, if you have to lean forward and kick your foot way far down to brake, you're gonna throw all your weight forward on the bike. You're gonna hinge your hips. You're gonna load the chassis weird. Versus if your brake lever and your shift lever is nice and high, you just kind of rock your foot forward and lean into it, and you're good to go, right? So getting the levers and the foot pegs and the shifters and brakes all situated for you is pretty key. Part of that is also, most bikes come with, on the handlebars, if you take the handlebars off, the risers have adjustments. You can move them forward, you can move them backward, and that changes not only how sharp the bike turns, but how open your cockpit feels, right? If I have the bars closer to me, it's going to turn sharper. If I have the bars farther from me, it's going to turn a little slower. But if I'm a taller guy like me, I have to put the bars a little bit farther out to open my cockpit up. Pegs too, you can get different pegs. Like I run Fastway pegs that are like 6 mil down and like 11 mil back. Just because I'm so tall, like it opens up my cockpit. It also helps me get weight on the bike further back. Because if my center of mass on the bike is, let's say here, and I move the pegs back even just a little bit, well, now I can get more weight on the back of the bike easier. So it's on Susan's bike, like I basically bring the bars closer to her and I run the stock pegs because, you know, she's so much smaller. And I actually cut the handlebars shorter. I take an inch off each side, not just to get her through the trees easier, but because her arms are just so much shorter,
Yeah.
right? If her arms are really far apart, she can't reach and she can't get far back on the bike. But if her arms are closer together, she can get further back, and she has more movement, more room to move front to back on the motorcycle, which on a dirt bike is really key. Moving front to back is helping you load the bike in situations that you need to load it. So I would say those are probably the most important things on bike setup, next to, you know, suspension and tires and pressures and stuff.
I imagine I'm going to go through that maybe this summer because I do not like the stock T7 cockpit. It's great for sitting, but I don't like standing up on that bike.
It's a little cramped
Yeah.
on hill climbs, is what I've
the bars
noticed.
are too close to me. I don't understand. And I don't think the stock 10 risers, I don't think you can just flip them around to gain half an inch or anything. If you can, I'm doing that.
No, no, you can't. And I think the Rally Raid ones that I bought, I don't remember. It's been a while. I don't think you can flip those either. I know on the MX Tech ones, there's three holes, so I
Yeah.
can move that forward or backwards. And I actually ended up bringing them. I think I'm either the closest one or the middle one. I can't remember. I'm not super far away.
Yeah.
But
I
did
better look that up.
you rode my bike
Yep.
or the blue bike?
Your bike.
You didn't ride the blue one that Corey
No.
was riding? Yeah. So
Pegs. Yeah.
my bike had the stock peg locations. Corey's, the one I built for Corey, had a 2-inch extension bracket, which brought the pegs back 2 inches, which, man,
Game
for
changer.
like Phil hill climbs and for like desert riding, oh my gosh, it was glorious. Because a lot of times on the hill climbs, I just feel like I'm super like cramped and I'm trying to get over the front end. And I'm like
Yep.
fighting the
Yes.
bars because my hips and my feet are too far forward.
Yeah,
Which is
for
interesting.
for listeners' benefit, I mean, Andy and I can obviously get in the weeds deep for everybody about everything. In this case, yeah, putting the pegs back helps because you don't want the bars actually to go too far forward. Like you never want your bars in front of the actual fork tubes, so you only have so much space to play with. But yeah, moving.
Yeah.
And most adventure bikes, to me, I feel like a lot of them, the pegs are not under you; they're still kind of in front of you. So
Yeah.
moving them back gives you a more aggressive off-road stance that I definitely prefer.
The other advantage to having the pegs a little bit further back is it's going to come into play when you're talking about like hand fatigue and death gripping the bars, because you don't just use your pegs as a place to like stand and like access the brake and the shifter. You use your pegs to like drive your body forward when you're like aggressively accelerating. So like you shouldn't have to be like death gripping the bars and holding on for dear life, right? You should be like an L shape and your heels are dropped, right? And your legs are straight and your knees are locked and you're hinging at your hips here, right? And the faster you go, the more you lean forward, and the slower you go, the more you can lean back. And so if I'm accelerating and I'm leaning my weight forward, my foot peg is actually driving my body
Yeah.
forward, right? And then as I'm slowing down, I'm relaxing. Like basically you should be able to just kind of like loosely like hold like this and just kind of be hovering the clutch and the brake. And if you're having to like hold on and like use your arms to like not fly backwards on the bike, you're not far enough forward. Like you need to just you need to find this like neutral position where you can stand and accelerate aggressively and you feel like neutral on the bike, like you're in a plane. You know, like when I'm in a plane, the plane is constantly driving me forward, but I don't feel it, right? So if I'm on a bike and I'm holding right and I'm standing right, that bike should be driving me forward and I shouldn't be having to do a lot of work to like hold on.
I want to take that segue into body position, but I do want to ask, are there some key bike setup things that people need to be careful? I know you have a strong opinion of risers. We've already talked about that before, but is there anything else with bike setup that people need to take into consideration off the top of
Yeah,
your
I
head.
mean, ape hangers for adventure bikes is what we'll call them. I did that on purpose while you were taking a swig. Um, it really, really slows down your steering and it slows down your feedback and your feel and your control. So, I mean, if you're cruising and you don't care, it's not a big deal. But the more aggressive that you want to be, generally, the lower the bars are and the shorter they are. I mean, if you're a taller guy, you're a taller guy and you need a little bit taller of a bar bend. That's one thing. You know, if you're 6'6" or something, you just need a little bit taller of a
Right.
bar. That's one thing, but you know, if you're trying to basically make it so you can stand and the bars are like up here, that's it's not gonna work. You're gonna your turning is gonna be really sluggish. So when you're trying to do really aggressive things and really tight turning situations, it's just not gonna end well.
We talked about suspension stuff and it would get crazy, but yeah, I was off the top of my head. I was thinking about like risks to lowering a bike or things to consider if you happen to do that, or like you said, just a lowering link. We talked about risers already. I'm just trying to think
Yeah.
anything else bike setup wise with
Anytime you
pegs or
lower a
brakes.
bike, you're gonna anytime you lower or raise a bike in general, anytime you do anything at all to the suspension, you're gonna mess up the geometry. And even something as simple as throwing a different tire on it. Like
Yeah.
there are some FIM rated tires, and you know they're only allowed to have like I don't remember what it is, like 3/4 of an inch or whatever. And then you get some other tires that have like an inch and a half knob on
Yep.
it that are super huge. That's going to completely change how the rear end sits. And if I'm running a moose and like a super soft plush moose and no pressure, my rear end's going to sag. So then I have to adjust my preload a little bit or my compression to kind of lift the front, or I have to slide the fork tubes up, right? And that could change like as I'm riding, right? Like let's say I start off a ride with a brand new moose and then I ride 1,000 miles and my moose is all of a sudden soft and I've lost a half an inch of, tire height because my moose is soft, right? Now my rear end is sitting like this. Well, I have to compensate for that or else the bike's going to handle funny. And I know I've had to learn that the hard way because like I fight with this on the suspension on my Tenere sometimes because I'm like, man, I built this bike and it was really, really light and it was really the front end felt really good and it wanted to wheelie and it was like a little jackrabbit. And then Corey rides it and I ride it and kind of slowly over time it just feels like the front just feels really dead and heavy and it doesn't want to turn and it's really sluggish. Well, the moose got really soft
Yep.
and it compressed or I ran a different tire. I swapped tires or whatever. I went from a 140 to a 120 with a shorter sidewall.
Yep.
And so now I need to slide the tubes up and, add a little bit more preload to raise the rear end to level the bike out. So anytime you start changing tires or changing linkages or sliding tubes around, you can really like aggressively affect the way that the bike handles. And if you're really sensitive to that,
Yep.
you'll notice it. If you're somebody like Bo, who just rides everything, no matter how destroyed it is, you're gonna be fine.
I mean, it's worth mentioning because like I've put 130s. That's width for the listeners at 130, 90, 18, the wider rear on my WR250. And I almost hate it when I'm on the asphalt. Like I can tell how much taller it makes the back of the bike and it makes it feel
Yeah.
awkward. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you're, like you said, if you're sensitive to that, you'll start to notice
Do you have
those
room
things.
in your forks to slide your tubes around?
Well, it'd be the other way around. It makes the back too tall. That's really what happens.
Yeah,
It's-
but you could slide your tubes
no,
down.
I've got them all the way to the top as
They're
it is
maxed
now.
out.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just wanted to mention some of that stuff. So if you want to talk about, you mentioned attack position in the very beginning. Do you want to define that for riders so they can kind of practice in the mirror or on their cell phone or whatever it is in the garage?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm trying to be really aggressive, if I'm trying to move quickly through the woods or go straight or go over whoops or whatever, like I'm trying to ride quickly, right? A lot of people tend to just kind of stand and bend their knees and like a common thing I see and I used to do it too is you would kind of flex your knees thinking that you're like absorbing the shock and helping the suspension. And the problem with that is what you're actually doing is you're throwing the suspension out of timing, is what I've learned, right? And I'm no professional and I'm no pro racer. I'm like barely a B level like guy if you were to throw me in like a dirt bike race. Like I'm terrible, right? Like so don't 100% take my word for it. Like take a class, do your own research, whatever. But like from what I've learned and what I've seen and things that I've tested and doing classes with guys like Brad and some pros and stuff is like if I'm riding and I'm sitting here like bending my knees, right? The shock is designed to take hits and absorb them a certain way. So if I'm like preemptively absorbing that impact, right? And the shock is doing one thing and my knees are doing another thing. Well, now I'm like throwing the bike all out of sync, right? Versus like if I keep my knees straight and I keep my heels dropped, right? What that does is that loads the rear end and that shock takes the load and that shock can just do its job. It can do what it's built to do, which is absorb the blows and then get back up, absorb the blows and then get back up. So my main goal is, drop my heels, kind of if this is my foot, right? And these are like my toes, I'm kind of just behind my toes, not on the arch, but like right here. And I'm dropping my heels as much as I can. And that's forcing weight into the rear end. If I'm sitting like this, right? And I'm on the arch of my foot, like I don't really have any control. If I want to like load the left side or the right side of the bike to turn or whatever, I don't have any control versus when I'm on my toes, I can actually drive. When I'm on the arch of my foot, I have no pressure. I have no drive, right? And also I'm not actually loading the rear end of the bike. Once I like go on my toes and drop my heel, I'm really loading that rear end of the bike. And once I keep my legs straight and I start pivoting basically like at my hips. So let's see, how can I, there we go.
I was just saying, for the listeners' benefit, Andy is making all kinds
I'm making little like stick
bunny,
figures,
rabbit,
right?
stick figures. So
these are my legs.
Riding on
like,
the balls of your feet. Yeah.
This is my peg. I'm riding on the balls of my feet, right? And I'm just hinging at the hips, up and down and up and down, right? If I want to go faster, right? I'm keeping my heels dropped, but I'm shifting my weight forward, right? And I'm letting the bike, the pegs and the bike drive me forward while my arms are just neutral. They're just hanging out. Like my arms should just be there dangling as a control stick. Like,
and get your chicken wings up.
Yeah, just get your chicken wings up, get your elbows out. You're just trying to like control with that. You're not trying to fight the bike. You're just letting the front end do what it's going to do. And you're just driving and you're just leaning into your feet when you're trying to, turn or whatever. A lot of it is just try not to like, you can sit, like there's times where you can sit, but in general, standing is, when you're like in an aggressive riding position, standing is usually the best because you can quickly shift your weight, right? To adjust your position on the bike to force the bike, or I won't say force the bike, to work with the bike so it can work with you. Like you have to basically like dance with the motorcycle so it will dance with you back. And if you're sitting there trying to fight the machine, it's going to fight you and it's going to wear you out. If you dance with it and you work with it and work with the suspension to let it drive you forward and let it do its job, you're going to have an easier, more fun time, if that makes any sense.
Do you still remember your first ride experience trying to stand up on a motorcycle?
Oh yeah, I sat down for like 800 years. Like I remember being in the woods on like my 2013 XC300 and they're like, "You're the fastest sit rider I've ever seen." I'm like, "Yeah, cuz I don't know how to stand. Like I can't get comfortable standing." Yeah. And a lot of it was bike setup, and how I was positioning and how I was moving my body. Like still to this day, like I would say like Michigan sand like trails, tight technical Michigan sand single track is some of the like most challenging like riding that I do, because it's a little bit of everything. You're hitting sand, you're hitting whoops, you're hitting like super tight turns, you're hitting trees that you can barely fit through, and you really can't sit a lot of the time because there's so many whoops. They're just everywhere. So I had to kind of learn over time how to stand properly and when to sit and when to stand. And most of the time, the only time I'm sitting now is like in a really tight turn where I'm trying to like really cut something super sharp and I have to really lean the bike over and I have to really load that outside peg with my foot to try and drive through the turn. And I'm like trying to sit way up on the seat to try and get like weight over the front end so it steers.
Yeah, I think it was my second major off-road experience, and it was riding Southern Ohio Adventure Loop, and it was, 180 miles of 50-50. I mean, I was just exhausted from standing up all the time. So I'm bringing that up for newer folks to it. That's like, you have to kind of work your way up to it. Like, you're going to be tired in the beginning. You need good boots. I don't want to do an entire gear podcast, but it's like, yeah, you need good boots to do that on too. Because again, your feet are going to be tired from standing on the pegs and stuff.
Good boots, good body position, a nice seat for when you do want to sit down.
Yeah.
I like the Guts Racing seat. Tall, extra soft, great.
Yeah, I should.
But yeah, in general, I would say I couldn't go a whole ride. I used to not be able to like stand like hardly at all. I would say 80% of the ride I would try and sit unless it was whoops, and I would force myself to stand up. But I also, again, bike setup, like I was going through whoops with a bike that was just way too soft, and I was just like, I couldn't go fast, I couldn't go slow. It was just miserable. And now, like even on my TE 250 now, it's still pretty soft for the whoops. But now I get on this Triumph, and I was like doubling whoop sections in the woods in like narrow tree sections, which I've never, ever done before. So that bike has a stiffer chassis and stiffer suspension, not uncomfortably stiff, but stiff enough to the point where I could skip whoops that I've never like ever done before.
In the adventure space, have you gone through bikes where you've had a hard time pinching the tank with your knees while you're standing?
I would say the best thing to pinch the tank with your knees, if you're trying to like do it without thinking about it, is like, okay, so imagine these are your feet and this is your foot peg, right? So basically the front of the bike is this way, right? So if I put my feet like this, I've got two problems. One is I can catch them on rocks.
For folks who can't see the screen.
So my feet are either out from the bike right now. So either imagine your feet are parallel with a motorcycle aiming forward, right? If they're aiming outward, right? I have two problems. A rock could catch my foot and rip it off the bike, which is what happened to Corey. Or if I aim my feet, I can't pinch. Like imagine trying to pinch, like put your toes out right now, like sit in your seat or stand up, pull your toes out, right? And try and pinch your knees. Like you physically can't. It like fights you from doing that, right? Now stand up and rotate your toes inward and put your heels outward. Okay, so now if I hit a rock, it glances off my foot and my foot stays on the peg, right? And it just deflects. But also now, like if you were to kneel down, like if you were to be standing straight up and your toes were in, if you were to bend your knees naturally drive into the tank. So if you just aim your feet a little bit inward, that's going to help you kind of like naturally use your body's normal mechanisms to pinch the tank a little bit. So I don't focus on like pinching the tank per se, like with physical muscles, because I mean, you could tell me I'm wrong because I don't really know that much, but I feel like you would wear yourself out before the end of the day. Like you're going to sit there pinching all day long for, however long you're riding a day, 6 hours, 8 hours, and you're going to do it. Like, do you think the guys racing Baja or racing like Dakar are sitting there for 14 days for 12 hours a day, physically pinching a tank with their knees? I don't think so. Yeah. Like, I think they would completely wear themselves out. So I think you need to use your body's normal mechanisms to aid you in doing what you need to do. It's the same thing with the shock, right? Like I don't need to do the shock's job. I need to let the shock do its own work. So if I just drop my heels and straighten my knees out, keep my back arched, instead of slouching, keep my back arched, the shock's going to do the work for me.
Yeah, I've done some hair scrambles on dirt bikes, and I'm like, okay, I've been fighting this bike so long, I'm exhausted, and I'm not pinching the tank anymore. But on ADV bikes, the shapes are not always advantageous. So hence the question. But I like the explanation.
I would say the new Tenere has more space to move forward and back.
Yeah.
Our generation Tenere is a little more cramped, but I don't find an issue pinching. I did get like tech spec style grips on it, and that was super helpful.
That was why I was curious about that. That was my next question.
I have run those, but also they rip off pretty quickly. Like they
Yeah.
just kind of wear out and fall off pretty quickly. I put some on Susan's Cove. They fell off. I put some on my Tenere. They didn't last very long. I think they're cool, but like honestly, I don't feel like I need them. Like if you're doing the right things with your body, you really shouldn't need something there, I guess is what it boils down to.
Yeah,
It's
it'll
kind of
work.
like Steg's pegs. If you've
Right.
seen Steg's pegs.
Yes.
So Steg pegs, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a bracket that goes like kind of like behind your knee, and it has little like hockey puck looking things that stick out to like hold you on the bike theoretically. I mean, in theory, it works. It holds you on the bike if you're trying to like go super fast. But like the reality is if you're doing it right, you should be finding a neutral body position where the foot pegs are driving you forward instead of needing a puck to basically hold like it's right around just below your knee, right? You shouldn't need something like that to hold you on the bike if your body position is correct. Like, does it work? Yeah. Do some people love them? Totally. Do I think it's a Band-Aid to help you do something that you probably could slightly do differently and not have to deal with like a product? I think so.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that we're going to talk about, right? Like, is if you have the time to do the practice and stick with it, you typically won't need that stuff, but it's a matter of time. Where do you want to transition? Does it make sense to talk about low speed balance stuff, or does it make more sense to talk about braking, or where do you think we should go?
We can talk about braking because you're already talking about body position and you're already talking about kind of, leaning, being, legs, heels down, legs straight, arching at the hips, elbows up, and you're accelerating. So you're kind of in a neutral body position. So now you're going to brake, right? And if my elbows are out and I'm braking, I have that brace of not rocking forward when I hit the brakes, and I've got good body position to support me, right? And if I'm braking, I can kind of just basically like shift my hips and lean back and get that weight back a little bit more. Or if I'm, coming into a turn, like it depends on where you're braking. Like if I'm just trying to brake straight, right, I'm going to get my hips back and I'm going to kind of brace for that aggressive brake. But if I'm coming into like a really aggressive turn, like I'm doing like a sand berm or something, and I'm trying to do like a supercross, like U-turn or something, I might actually brake, come forward, sit my butt down on the seat and slide my crotch as far forward as I can go on that seat to get weight over that front end.
Yeah.
So that front end is biting as I'm coming through the turn, that front end is digging so I can get steering power, right? And then as I'm coming out of the turn and I'm gassing it, that rear end is kind of swinging around because I have weight over the front. The front is steering, the rear is swinging, and then I can kind of slowly shift my weight back and drive out of the turn.
Yeah, it's definitely a
To
more
shift weight back.
advanced technique, or something that dirt bike folks would understand in the adventure space. Yeah, I think
You still do it. There's go watch Seth's video today. Seth just posted a video today that we just took yesterday.
Seth is not what I would call an intermediate ADV rider.
We had to mess with his shock a lot. His rebound was way too soft.
No, I think that makes sense, because I think for the average adventure rider, downhill, realizing you have too much speed, catching like noticing an obstacle up ahead and you're already headed downhill and you're trying to scrub off speed. I think those braking
So downhill,
techniques matter a lot.
So different stories. So we talked about going flat, right? So if I'm on a flat surface and I'm just going straight, I'm going to try and, if I'm just trying to stop, right, I'm going to get my weight back. So that way I'm not loading up the front too much, and I can kind of drag that rear brake and that front brake, and I'm not just kind of nose diving the front end, and my body's not throwing over the front. If I'm coming to a really sharp, aggressive turn, I'm going to brake and put my weight forward so I can steer,
Yep.
right? Now, if I'm on a downhill, right, I'm going to be way back on this bike, right? Because I want weight over that rear tire. I still want to use the front brake, but I want to use a lot of the rear brake because I can skid and steer the rear end where I want to go. So I'm trying to scrub off speed a little bit by, dragging the rear brake and kicking the rear end sideways a little bit to steer my bike. I'm steering more with the rear end than the front end. And I'm still using a lot of front. I'm just not mashing it, I'm just using it to kind of mitigate speed as we'll call it. I don't want to let the bike get out of control. So for me, what I like to do is I like to, crest over a hill, and I like to be back on the bike, and I like to be on the rear and on the front. So I'm like already ready to go, and I'm not getting out of control. And if I want to give it a little bit more speed, I can let off a little bit, but I'm never just kind of like letting the bike run away down the hill.
Yeah.
Unless it's pretty smooth and there's nothing down there.
My biggest fear for a lot of folks just, casually adventure riding is, you see something, you're on a downhill, you see something that tells you, oh Lord, I need to slow down to get around this water bar, rain rut, whatever it is. Yeah. And you get a big handful of front brake, or you're putting too much weight on the front, and you get through most of the travel, the forks, and you lock the front tire up. So getting that weight back really gives you a little extra suspension to work with, gives you a little more braking power.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm way back, right, and the shock is kind of just already loaded, the bike is raked out on this hill. If I'm way far forward, the front end's compressed, and now if I do hit something, it's more likely that there's nothing for the front end to there's no suspension left for the front end to absorb that hit and go over that obstacle. So I'm more likely to stuff it and then tumble down the hill.
Yeah.
It's not usually really common that people stuff the front end and go down a hill. Most people just they get scared and they lock up the rear and they just fall over because they have trouble standing and balancing and using their hips to balance the bike as they're going down the hill. What I notice most people do is they get scared. So I'll stand on the hill and I'll stand the whole way down, riding the brake front and rear. A lot of people will try and instead of rolling the hill, the cresting the top of the hill and rolling and continuing going, they try and stop at the top of the hill where they're cool, I'm going to stop and I'm going to check this out. Well, in reality, now I have to start unbalanced. I have to start cresting this hill where I'm already aimed down when I have no balance. If I keep going, I roll up to it, I kind of slow down, I hover a little bit, but I'm still moving and I'm still standing. And then I let the clutch out and roll over it. I still have my balance. I'm still on my pegs. I still have control of the bike. But the minute I stop, I've lost control of the bike, right? And the minute I have to get back up on the pegs, it's going to take me a couple of seconds to get my bearings. And if you don't get up and get on the pegs right away, you might just roll down that hill super aggressively because you weren't ready for that. You couldn't get to the rear brake fast enough, right?
Yeah, the rear brake becomes more useless to you because all your weight now is on the front of the tank rather than on the back fender where you really want it.
Yeah. So anytime I see somebody if you're not sure about a hill, roll next to it and take a look at it where you can turn around and come back and hit it with some momentum. Or if you're going to roll up to it, make sure you have enough skill to roll up to a hill, pull the clutch in, kind of balance for a second, and then be okay, cool. I'm gonna keep going, right? If you feel like you need to stop at the top of that hill, I would not recommend doing it, aiming at the hill if you can't back up and start over, or if you can't turn around and start over, because it's gonna put you in a situation that might be harder to get out of or harder to recover from.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think of us racing, Kentucky's wet tracks in the mud, some of the downhills on big bikes that, you go from standing to sitting mid-hill, and the consequences of that, you've already sat down and you really need to move back further to get better control of the rear brake, X, Y, and Z. So if you can attack that standing, it usually pays off to at least keep standing until you're done and then take a rest at the bottom.
Well, and in those Kentucky hills and those Kentucky races, a lot of times we would crest a hill and then come down a hill, and then at the bottom of the hill we would immediately go back up another hill.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to sit coming down into the bottom and then into the next hill, if I'm sitting down, it's completely disadvantageous to be sitting down because I need to be weight back, weight back, weight back, weight back, and then I hit the bottom, and as I'm coming forward, now all of a sudden my weight needs to be way forward over the front end. So you have to be able to like rapidly shift your body position. And also like when I'm standing and I'm doing that downhill, I can really like shift and balance a lot versus if I'm sitting. So you just get a
Yeah.
lot more control.
I mean, we're hitting a lot of casual ADV riders with some pretty,
Aggressive
yeah,
stuff.
aggressive situations, right? Racing well, but the fundamentals are the same, right? So yeah, like we're taking you down memory lane of racing, hair scrambling carnage, but the principles are the same. Any other comments about braking?
You can be about as aggressive as you want with the rear. You just got to be careful with the front. You want to be more progressive with the front. You start stabbing the front, you're going to start stabbing the ground.
What's the best way for people to practice?
Braking
Yeah.
in a flat gravel parking lot, and I would say the way that we used to teach it in the training classes was, find a parking lot, find some cones, start in gravel and just accelerate second gear as quick as you can, and then just slam on the rear brake and just get used to how that rear end dances. Get comfortable with letting that rear end dance and locking it up. And if it gets too far, kind of ease off it and then let it straighten itself out and then get back in it. But rear brake only. And then once you get used to that rear end dancing and that rear end sliding, right? Now start storing in the front brake. And the front brake, you want to you can smash that rear brake, but that front brake, you want to really progressively be smooth about pulling it. And I want you to kind of start throwing in the front brake, take it easy and just kind of push it a little further, a little further, a little further. You're going to have to really work on that body position and getting that weight back. With the rear brake, it's not going to be as bad, but once you start throwing in that front brake, it's going to really want to chuck your body forward because that bike's going to want to stop really fast. So if your body position isn't ready, if your hips aren't back, if your butt's not back, if your arms aren't stretched out, your whole body weight's just going to get thrown forward. It's going to load that front end and it's going to want to wash out. So you're going to kind of very smoothly try and give it some more front brake progressively. Each pass, more front brake, more front brake. You're going to get to a point where you're going to start to feel a little bit of shimmy in the front handlebars, and that's when you're like right at that limit, right? So you either need to get your weight further back, or you need to ease off the brake and get back into it a little bit more. So the goal is to just try and find the limits, like in a safe space, and you'll be amazed like how fast you can stop. You can literally cut your distance in half. Like with the rear brake, you'll just slide. You'll just fly off into the distance. But once you start throwing in the front brake, you'll cut that distance like easily in half. The other thing that you want to make sure you do is never ever traction control or ABS. And if your bike has it and you don't know how to disable it, just pull the ABS fuse. It'll just put it in a limp mode and it'll shut everything down. If you have a BMW, you're probably screwed because it's going to throw 8,000 error codes on the dash, and it's probably going to send robots and police to your house, and they're going to arrest you and take you to BMW jail for trying to be a safe off-road rider.
That's
There's too many nannies on the new bikes.
I was gonna say it's polarizing. So leave comments here on Spotify or send me hate mail because I'm sure people are gonna be like that. I am mostly anti off-road ABS.
So did you see Tom Asher went down some hill and he thought he had something turned off on his BMW and he didn't, and he literally tumbled down this hill because he couldn't do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because the BMW was like, oh, I'm a computer and I'm smart and I'm going to do something that I think is right in this scenario. And it did something completely what it shouldn't done. And he tumbled down a hill.
Yeah, no thank
And people were like, that's why you shouldn't do that on a big adventure bike. And he was like,
Yeah, Tom did the dirty 130 in like 5 hours by himself. So
yeah.
it's
It was a pretty gnarly. I saw the hill. It looked pretty not fun.
No, Tom's definitely got some talent there.
So yeah,
no,
turn off all your nannies if you can. If you don't know how to turn it off and the bike won't let you, the safest default is always just find the ABS fuse and pull it, and it's gonna shut off everything. Or just unplug like a rear wheel speed sensor. That works too. Yeah. Not the front, because that's usually what your speedometer is driven off of on most bikes. But if you pull one of the ABS sensors, the thing is for traction control and for ABS, it needs references from front to rear wheel speed. And if it doesn't have those, it just shuts the system down. So you can cheat the system that way.
Yeah, I mean, that was the old school Super Tenere way, I think is what it was. So No, that's really good info, and it's funny because I think about it. Like my T7's got really soft suspension, so I really need to practice panic braking more because that front end dives pretty good, and if you're not throwing your weight back over the rear wheel, that front wheel gets loaded and will low side easily.
I think we just like I rode with you not too long ago, and I feel like you're ready for a 48 mil conversion and a real shock. I feel like
I am
you need it.
mentally ready. As soon as
You
I can
need
be
it.
financially ready, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I think you just need to get on those what's that, poly market or whatever. You need to start making bets.
I need to do that and start selling some feet photos. That's for sure.
Susan
Um,
can do that. You sell them.
uh, do you want to talk about transition over to balance?
Balance is a really good one. We kind of glanced over it. Like if I'm cresting a hill and
Hmm.
I'm like trying to size up my next obstacle, if I can sit there and hover and balance for a second and stay on the pegs, that makes me more ready for the next obstacle. The minute I put my feet down and stop and I lose drive and momentum and inertia, I lose control of the bike, and it's going to take me, 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, if your balance isn't great, to get back up on the bike and get balanced and get ready to go for the next obstacle. And if you watch any kind of like enduro, hard enduro, in general, there is no room for obstacles. I don't know. Did you see that video that I posted from Moab where we were going up Pritchett, and I had like a 20-inch step up, and I had like a bike length to start from a stop, and we had to like launch
Yeah.
up this crazy step. It was without balance, that's not even like possible. You have to, for that move, you have to be on the pegs, ready to go, like loading the suspension and like popping the clutch to like drive up over that obstacle. You cannot do that obstacle sitting down. It's just not, I mean, you could, but it would be very sloppy and it would not end well.
It, and I think that's where the two things are related, right? That you need the stamina, you need to practice standing up and being comfortable to have endurance to stand up. And at the same time, you need to have balance and endurance because as you lose your balance and you lose your endurance, you just start wearing yourself out more trying to get out of a situation. So you have to practice the endurance and skill set of balance, and because having good balance also helps keep your endurance up.
You're constantly like dancing with the bike, and you're constantly saying, okay, I need to put the bike's weight here, and if I put the bike's weight here, I have to counteract that bike's weight. And there's only a few ways to counteract that bike's weight: speed or inertia, right? So if I lean a motorcycle over, I'm on a sport bike and I lean a motorcycle over, you notice, they're pushing the bike out, but they're leaning their body in because they're going at such a fast rate of speed that they have momentum, they have tire stiction, they have heat, they have like gravity and all of these forces pushing down, like the suspension forces pushing down on the ground, right? So I either have speed, right? Or I have gravity and my weight, right? So if I want to turn a motorcycle, if I want to shift the weight of the motorcycle in a new direction, right? Based on my speed, if I'm going very slow, I can push the bike under me and counteract my weight to the outside of that bike so it does not fall over. So if I'm going to lean the bike, let's say to make a left turn, I need to load all of my weight on this outside right peg, or the bike will just fall over because there's gravity and the bike is heavy and I'm not going fast enough, right? There's not enough gyroscopic motion in the wheels to keep the bike upright. Now, if I were to accelerate aggressively, right? If I were falling and I kind of just gave it a pop of throttle, that would pick the bike back
Yeah.
up, right? I could weight the bike, or I could give it a little throttle, or I could do a little bit of both, right? So you're constantly like dancing with this motorcycle, understanding where the weight is, what's it doing, what's my weight, how heavy am I, how much do I have? Like I can force the bike to do more than Susan can. So Susan has to rely on, that's why
Hmm.
she likes that Cove, because it's got a lot snappier of a power. So when she gets in a situation where that bike wants to fall over, she can't really, like, A, she doesn't have the height to shift
Right.
around. and B, she doesn't have the weight to shift around. So she just whacks that throttle and that thing just ups itself and the suspension takes care of it. Versus I have a little more weight versus somebody like Radek, who's, 200, I don't know, 50, 60 pounds. Radek just commands that 890. Like he just looks at it and the bike's like, whatever, I'll go where you want. Right. So you're constantly like dancing with this motorcycle, understanding what it is, what its power is, how to control it, how to, feed in power smoothly with the clutch, and how to shift your body weight to help the bike help you. You don't want to fight the bike. You never want to be fighting the motorcycle. You want to dance with this motorcycle so you both can accomplish the same goal, which is don't destroy yourself or the bike in the trail.
What are some of the best ways to practice this for folks who are listening?
I mean, a lot of it is like you can do it in your driveway. You can do it at home. You could do it in the grass. You like literally just, if you want to like go ride in a circle, right? Let's say I want to just stand on the bike and I want to go in a slow circle and I want to like ease the clutch out and I want to lean the bike under me and I want to kind of stand straight and I want to load that outside peg. You want to just try tighter and tighter circles. Don't go real tight all of a sudden, but start wide, feel what the bike's doing, right? And then kind of bring it in tighter and feel how much more you can lean the bike and feel how much more weight you have to weight that outside peg, and just try and go tighter and tighter until you can get full lock, with the clutch out, and you're just weighting that outside peg and you're just doing this space that's like the size of like a parking spot, right? Do it a million times until you can go left, and then do it a million times so you can go right. And sometimes the bike's going to want to fall and you can give it a little bit of clutch, right? You don't want to give it gas, right? You want to give it a little bit of clutch because the gas is going to be like really abrupt, and you don't want to be like on and off the clutch. You want to be slowly like feeding in and out the power to try and keep it smooth. And you want to kind of switch sides, start on the left, get comfortable with that, start on the right, and then start doing figure eights. The reason that you want to be smooth and you want to use the clutch is the minute that you let the clutch out and you start using the throttle, the bike gets violently jumpy. And the bike gets violently jumpy, the chassis becomes unstable, and you're just gonna lose control of the bike. You're gonna fall over. When you start feathering the clutch and feathering in and out the power, right? You might have to give a little bit of gas if you have a smaller CC bike, but if you're feathering in and out the power, you can control how smooth that power is being delivered. And if the bike wants to fall over, you can give it a little bit more, a little bit faster, right? And if you want to go slower, you can pull in the clutch. And if you want to go really slow, like super, super slow, right? You can feather the clutch a little bit and you can drag that front brake. When you drag that front brake, it's going to suck that front end into the turn because it's going to slow the front wheel speed down and let the rear end walk around you. So you can get to a point where like literally, and I used to do this when we did training classes, I could lean the bike all the way over. I could put my left foot on the right peg and I could drag the front brake and not even have to feather the clutch because the Tenere is such an amazing motorcycle, right? And I could literally just stand on the right peg with my left foot and I could just wave my right leg in the air. And that's how much weight I can shift on the outboard side, and that's how little weight I need on the inboard side. Because I'm trying to balance, like this is a game of balance. I'm trying to balance a 500-pound motorcycle from falling over, right? So the tighter and the slower I want to go, the more weight I have to put outside. And I would recommend, like I always do, training classes. We don't do our training classes anymore, but there's a lot of options out there now. There's a million people and all of their mothers doing training classes. In the Midwest, Moo ADV has a great, it's actually a 4-tiered training program now. They're about an hour and a half away from me, and it's by CJ Designs. And they do a really great job. We've helped them do some of their classes, and they're really nice people.
And I think the application here is probably going to feel silly at first, but it helps you work on your balance. It helps you kind of master the turns and whatnot. But I think people don't realize, like you said, how much counterweight you really have to put on an adventure bike if you get stuck in a situation where you have to do a tight turn. So having that practice on the front end really pays the bills later, because something dumb happens. You stopped in a bad spot, and now you can't get around to where you need to be and whatnot. So you'll be comfortable having done that work on the front end.
You're gonna understand your bike better, and you're gonna be more comfortable on it. And the biggest thing that like I've noticed is like I don't want to go out with somebody who's not comfortable on their bike on a 500-mile BDR, right? Because you're going to be nervous and then you're not going to commit to something and you're going to fall and you're going to break a bunch of stuff and it might be you. And then we have to help you and fix you and get you out. And that's not what anybody wants to do. But when you do these kind of things and you learn your bike and you learn your limits and maybe you learn that you don't even want to do this, like this sucks. It's going to make you a more competent rider when it matters. Because it doesn't matter when you fall over in your yard. It doesn't matter when you drop the bike 100 times in your gravel driveway or even on your regular driveway. Like, it matters when you drop the bike on day 3 of the BDR and it's raining and you're pissed off because you bought the wrong tires and you've got way too much gear and you've tried this obstacle for the 6th time and you're 160 miles into a 200-mile ride and you don't have enough gas to go back and you have to finish this obstacle or you are sleeping in the woods and being eaten by a bear. Like, these are real, they're real consequences that like people don't tell you on the fancy BDR flyers. Like, you need to make sure that you're confident, like, before it matters that you're confident, or you're going to get yourself in trouble.
What are the most convenient clutch friction zone practice that people can do?
I mean, I always tell people, like, even just people who have never ridden before, is like, just get on a bike. And like, it's, even when I get on a brand new bike, someone's a bike that I haven't ridden, a new bike that I just bought, like, the first thing I do is I get on the bike, I start the bike, I put it in gear, I let it out until I feel it move, I pull it back in. I let it out until I feel it move, I put it back in. I find that like friction zone on that clutch like 5 or 10 times until I'm like, okay, that's where it is. Right. And then I start like riding away on it. So find where that friction zone is and understand where it is and understand like how much like torque that bike has off the bottom line. Some bikes need a lot of throttle, not just clutch. Some bikes like the Tenere, you could let the clutch out all day and the bike would just run away on its own. So understanding not just the clutch, but the relation with the clutch and the throttle and how that bike works. If you've got like a 4-stroke KTM that's untuned and like and completely corked up from the factory, like a street legal version, yeah, you're never going to get that bike going without any throttle. Like, they're miserable.
I used to have a really steep driveway, which you've seen. I like to ride up the driveway like as slow as possible so I could work on balance. And then, you know, the driveway naturally means that you got to, you know, give it more clutch. And I mean, I would literally stall it in the driveway a lot, but it was still trying to master that friction zone to crawl up that driveway as slow as I could when I put the bike away.
That reminds me of a really cool drill. So we did some training with Graham Jarvis, and he put us on a little hill, just a little dirt hill, where there was like a rut, so you could put your feet down, right? So you'd be on this little hill. Let's go this way. You'd be on this like little hill, and you'd put your feet down, and he would tell you like, I want you to like clutch up into a wheelie, and then just like try and hover there.
Yeah.
Or I want you to like clutch and not stall the bike, but I want you to ride up the hill and down the hill without touching the brake and just using the clutch. So friction zone, roll up, and then pull in the clutch, not all the way, just enough to roll backwards without doing anything, and then let the clutch back out and ride up a couple feet and then in. So you're never fully letting the clutch out and you're never fully pulling the clutch in. You're just finding that friction zone to go forward and backward and forward and backward. And the whole time you're never touching the brakes.
Yep.
You're just leaving it in gear and you're just on a hill and you're just forward, backward. That's a really great drill to teach you like how much control you have in a situation to like, especially like on a steep hill. If I am trying to go up a hill and I stall it, well, I can still maybe go up a little bit and then create like momentum. Like if I want to like clutch it, go up a little bit, but then there's like a ledge and I'm not ready for it, I can clutch up and then pull in the clutch, right? And then let it roll back. But then I'm never really letting off the clutch. I'm just getting it ready. And then I'm going to kind of load up the power and then let it out and launch, right? So I can use that scenario on like a gnarly section where let's say I can't touch the brake. Have you ever watched like a really gnarly hard enduro?
Yeah.
And you're like, how are they pivoting?
Yeah.
And like stopping, like they're stopping the bike and they're just hovering the front end there, but their right foot is on the ground.
Right.
And you're like, how are they stopping there? They're literally like,
clutch.
they're playing with the friction zone to hover the front end and then turn it wherever they want to go and aim the bike and then drop it back down, all with the clutch, all of it.
Yeah.
So the clutch can be like a rear brake, basically.
Yeah. Most of us will never get to that space, but it's
Especially not an adventure bike.
right. But it's important to talk about because I feel like when you first get into this space, it's one of the times where you just get exhausted. You've been getting your butt kicked by an obstacle and you need to get through it. And you realize, man, my left hand is smoked. But had we practiced clutch control more, we would probably have more traction. We may have made it over this obstacle already. We would have more endurance. So it's worth doing the drills in the backyard, in the driveway, on the neighbor's hill, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. The other thing with like clutch control too is understanding like wet and loose traction. Like a lot of people think they just let the clutch out and just slam the gas and just spin the rear tire and try and get over something. You can do a lot more, especially if you have a softer tire or you have a tire with lower pressure. If you just kind of like feather the clutch out to like crawl over an obstacle to find traction, right? Instead of just like trying to hammer the gas and dump the clutch and you're just wheel spinning and like flipping the rear end around. Like if let's say there's a ledge, right? And like a drop off. So I'm sitting like on this ledge and there's a drop off and I'm like trying to go at an angle. If I just like dump the clutch and slam the gas, my tire is going to fall off into that hole that I just tried to get out of, right?
Yeah.
Versus if I kind of like feather the clutch and try and crawl up, I might be able to get up onto the next obstacle and out of where I'm at. So the feathering the clutch is going to help you find traction and like keep the tire planted where you want it instead of just chucking it wherever it decides to go when you violently spin the rear wheel.
I mean, you and I have seen it. I mean, a million hair scrambles. Folks are literally just let the clutch out and they're just holding it wide open. And it terrifies me because if that goes bad, it's violent. Like especially if it's a 500-pound motorcycle, like there's no controlling it at that point. It is, 75 horsepower or more, 500 pounds. It is a freight train going somewhere, maybe even right back at you. So it's like, yeah, that is a bad habit that you would be unwise to start, especially if you the get off the bike and push person. Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, that goes south really quick.
Yeah, and to kind of build upon that, if you happen to be in a situation where you're trying to find traction, it's actually better to sit on the bike and get back on the rear tire so you get more traction. More weight equals more traction, right? Versus if I get off the bike and I'm pushing it, there's not enough weight on there, so the tire is going to spin a lot easier. And what's a fun concept is if I'm like trying to like, let's say I'm like, my bike's here and there's a ledge here and I'm trying to pop up and over that ledge. I'm going to get my body back over the rear tire, right? I'm going to rev the engine up, or what we call load the engine up. So I'm spinning the engine up. I'm getting the engine ready. I have a lot more power, right? And then I'm kind of like finding that limit of where the clutch is starting to engage. And then as I like pop the clutch and give it gas to go over the obstacle, I'm going to literally pull my body over the front end. So I'm sitting back to get traction, but then as I get traction, right, and the bike wants to go up over the obstacle, I'm pulling forward and throwing my weight over the front end. So now all of a sudden the front end goes up and over, and I'm like almost throwing the bike over the obstacle. And then once the rear tire gets up, like because my body's getting thrown forward, the rear tire just kind of like pops itself up, and then you just roll over the obstacle. Versus if I were to just sit there and try and just push over the obstacle, I have no weight on that rear tire. Like it's just going to spin and spin and spin, and you're just going to piss people off and leave a bunch of tire marks on everything.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the bad habit that I see happen the most often is, somebody has put their rear tire in a rut. It's where we hang out. It's probably clay or wet and full of wet rocks, and they can't get out of there. And so they have a habit of sitting down on the bike and then using their legs to push, and they're actually pulling their butt off the seat because they're trying
Yeah.
to push with their legs. But it's like, yeah, the
Yeah.
reality is that you should be dropping all your weight on the rear fender, only using your feet to just keep the bike upright, trying not to disturb the suspension as much as you can help it.
And that's where the balance comes in, right? So
Yeah.
like I have a foot down, and a lot of times I try it as much as I can. I try and like, left foot on the peg, and my butt on the seat,
Yeah.
like way back. Or sometimes even just like if I want to stand and do like a pivot or something, even if I have my foot on the peg, but I'm at least like right foot on a rock and my left foot on the peg, at least if I'm dropping my heel and I'm forcing weight into the suspension, like the biggest thing is you just want to put weight into that rear tire, like wherever you can, whether you're sitting, whether you're standing and you're driving it with your heel. You don't want to be just like arbitrarily like on the front end of the bike. You need to weight that rear tire to find traction. If you want traction, you need to look for traction, and you need to like use your body to help the bike get traction. It's not just going to find it on its own.
It's that was an excellent segue that you just made. So getting unstuck was the next place that I wanted to go anyway. So yeah, I see. I mean, we can always use the rally that shall not be named. That's always a good place to start. But yeah, Kentucky Danny Boone Backcountry Byway, BDR style stuff. I think the average person's going to run into rain ruts, mud, clay, Jeep pits, stuff like that. I think those are the things that the average adventure rider runs into. So what are some other techniques that they should probably think about? And a lot of it, I think, is built upon or the predecessor to what we've already discussed. But if you would, sir.
I mean, standing is always like your best bet because you can quickly balance and adjust, right? Obviously, we know the rule. If you can't see the bottom, don't go through it, right? In general, like momentum is your friend. It helps you get through things. With ruts, just look way, way, way ahead of the rut. Don't look at the walls. Don't look at the rut. Just look way, way forward. If you're really uncomfortable and you want to sit, by all means, sit, kick your way through it. Just keep your momentum, right? You're better off standing because you can quickly shift your weight left and right so you don't fall. But not everybody's comfortable in doing that, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world. It just you can't react as quickly to adjust your body when things start to happen.
Are there, I say, unintended consequences or things that people need to watch out for if they're paddling, though? Or
yeah, I
like
mean, you could
said,
fall
sitting?
and you could literally like catch a leg under something, or you can, I don't. It depends on where you're paddling, right? Like if there's enough room to paddle, like if you're in a V, freaking paddle. Like who cares? But I mean, if you're on a peak, it's a bigger issue because you're going to go and try and paddle, and you're probably just going to fall over, and you might fall into a mud hole, or you might fall like down a cliff or something. So I think everything is like relative based on where you are and
Yeah.
what you're doing. So yeah, if you're on like a V cliff head, yeah, you definitely want to stand because your consequences of falling are high. And if you cannot dab and you go to dab, it's going to be a really bad day for everyone in your crew.
And I don't think scenic, novice and scenic adventure riders, unless they're lost, are probably not going to run into a tough situation. I do think
It
what I would,
shouldn't be.
yeah,
No,
what I would
but you never know.
classify. No, I agree.
Take a
but-
wrong turn and you're in a shithole.
Yes. No, and that's why was going to say like intermediate riders, I think though, they could get in a situation where they're getting it over their head. What worries me usually is strange offsets of rocks and down logs and tall grass and stuff where folks get
Yeah.
a habit of paddling and you get the whole like foot in front of you, you want to put it up on the log, but then the peg comes by at an odd time and you get trapped by the pegs and the obstacles. That's always my biggest fear when I'm paddling and dabbing.
I think I more worry about people like paddling and dabbing and sitting on downhills. I think downhills are more dangerous because on a downhill, the bike can run away a lot faster on you.
Yeah.
And it can become like out of control. And if you're sitting, you don't really have balance and you don't really have control over the rear brake. And you kind of use your hips a lot to like kind of like hit the brake and kind of throw the bike left or right. Right. So if I'm sitting, I can't really do that. And if I'm sticking my feet out and trying to like stop the bike, well, now I'm just using all front brake and I'm sliding forward on the bike and I'm loading up the front end. So I think on a downhill, I would never want to see anyone sit on an aggressive downhill. It just sounds terrifying. But I
Yeah.
mean, like on a flat area, it's like do whatever is going to work for you that you're comfortable with, unless it's like a high risk, and then maybe don't.
The thing that I think of that is the most common that people can run into, Southern Ohio Adventure Loop, it has a lot of, it's mostly immaculate gravel roads, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
places where it's actually graded clay with gravel on top.
Mm.
And with enough traffic and enough rain, it's actually really slippery. Those are
Sounds
the type of
deceiving.
downhills where a novice could accidentally run into that situation. And so this advice is more relevant in those places where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
you got to pick a starting speed that you're comfortable with, and you want to stand as long as you can, because that's not a good place to put a foot down, because your
Yeah.
foot's not going to have traction. And once it gets caught by a peg and the bike comes over, you're in a bad spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, ruts is whatever. I mean, if it's flat, go through it the way you need to go through it.
Fortunately, that's somewhat the reality all the time. I had deep ruts paddling. We've talked about some mud. You didn't mention anything about gear choices. Not riding gear, but transmission gears.
Uh, Downhill or uphill?
Getting unstuck, sir. You tell me.
Um, I prefer a taller gear. So on hill climbs or on getting unstuck, if you put it in a lower gear, you tend to get a lot of torque, which tends to increase like wheel spin. And usually when you're stuck, you're getting a lot of wheel spin. So the first thing when I'm stuck is normally everyone digs out a hole, right? So my first thing is, get forward or get backward out of that hole so you can, get through it easier. If you just keep sitting in that hole, you're just going to keep digging a deeper hole. So I like to kind of like rock the bike forward. Again, use the clutch forward, and then as much as I can, and then, back up. If I'm on a hill, I'm using the clutch as a brake. So I'm kind of like clutching forward, pulling the clutch in, getting past my little hump. And, then maybe I'm clutching back out and launching again, or maybe I'm just like stopping, like with my tires in between that little hump, and maybe I'm just going to get out and I'm going to fill that hump with some dirt, and then I'm going to stick it in a higher gear. So if I'm in first, I'm going to stick it in second, because I can rev the bike out more, and I can feather the power with my clutch, and I can really just like launch it, and I'm going to get more torque and more drive and less wheel spin, right? So I may stug, I may like chug, I may stall like the first time when I try it, but I'm not just going to like violently dig a hole because I'm in first gear and I have all this wheel spin because I'm trying to just chuck the bike. So I prefer to be in a higher gear, whether I'm getting out of something or whether I'm hill climbs. There's times where I do hill climbs in the Tenere in third. I mean, the bike just has so much torque. I was at, this is actually a pretty good example. I was doing one of the Fox Valley races, and it was a torrential downpour, and they took us up this hill, and it just kept getting greasier and greasier. It was clay. It was really slick. One guy literally launched off the hill and like went into the woods and nearly died on his Tenere. I did that hill in fourth gear. I started from a stop in fourth gear because it was so muddy and so rainy that I just like revved it up as high as I could, and I just dumped the clutch, and it like the engine was definitely chugging, but it was getting me enough drive, right? And enough bite to get up the hill instead of just spinning up and sliding me out. Because literally it was so much clay. If I got any wheel spin at all, I would just slide out and fall over, right? The rear end would just swing. So that fourth gear pull, I just rev the crap out of it, dump the clutch, and it just chugged right up that hill. So yeah, higher gear is generally a better option.
It's
And you'll
probably
see that,
Go ahead.
like Cody Webb just was doing a race, and he went up a hill in like third on his 280. It's a 250 four-stroke, bored out to like 280 or 290 or something, and he literally stuck that bike in third. And I was like, geez, a 300cc four-stroke to do like a hard enduro hill climb in third is bananas.
Yeah. I mean, it's also some good practice. So like we were talking about friction zone stuff in the driveway. Like, yeah, go up another gear. Find out how much torque and friction zone you have on a small incline, and learn how to master it will help.
I found, like, especially on my 254 stroke, I found, and on Susan's new 300, I found it was easier to do a pivot turn in second gear because it was easier to control. Like first is just kind of violent, right? It just kind of picks up and it's like, whoa, that was quick. But you throw it in second gear and it's just more like smooth and controlled, and you have a little bit more control with the clutch, and it's not as jumpy and jerky.
Yeah, no, it's essential. That much is for certain. We talked about that quite a bit. And there was something else about what about tire pressure? Should people
Tire
mess with
pressure
that
is
at all?
huge. Yeah, I mean, I would always say yes. I mean, it's it's really hard to ride off road with um, a lot of tire pressure, especially in slick conditions. Like um, if you're in like hard pack, yeah, more tire pressure is great because you want that hard tire to really dig into the dirt. But if you're in mud or clay or sand or whatever, you want a nice wide footprint, and you also want it to kind of like conform to whatever the obstacle is that you're going over, whether it's like a log or a rock or drew or whatever. If that tire is full of air, it's gonna bounce and deflect off things like a full basketball, right? But then all of a sudden, if you let half its air out and you're at 10 or 15 psi, which you want a rim lock for, I'm going to say that right now. If you're at 10 psi in an adventure bike, you want a rim lock. That tire is going to kind of conform to the object as it goes over it instead of like get deflected as you're trying to go over it. What I will say is like high speed desert stuff, more tire pressure because you're going at such a high rate of speed that you can easily like hit a rock and just compress your tire, pinch a tube, crush a rim, right? But then if I'm doing like hard enduro and I want max traction and at a lower speed and I want a wide flat footprint and something that just constantly conforms to every rock and every rut, and every time I'm off camber, I want the tire to just conform to what I want. Like less is more. Even on adventure bikes, less is more, but you have to have the right rims for that. Most stock adventure bike rims aren't the right width for that. You start going below 20 psi and you tend to like pop tires off the beads or pinch tubes or whatever. So you usually have to have custom wheels built that are narrower to go with rim locks and lower psi than that.
That was what my advice was going to be. Is I run 28 most of the time just because I like the extra cushion,
In
comfortable.
the front or the rear?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, the catch is in the rear if you start running mid 20s, especially, and it all depends on bike, right? If you got a high horsepower
Yeah.
bike, is a whole other conversation. But that's exactly it. Is the more wheel spin that you have, the more risk you are of tearing a valve stem off your tubes.
It's also tire dependent and
Right.
and and rider dependent, and
Yes.
like, so if you run a Motaz that's hard as a rock and you run any less than 20 psi, any kind of load and it just debeads because the tire's so stiff, it takes a hit and it just pops right off the bead. Versus you run like a Shinko MX216 and the tire will flex and move all day long and not really go anywhere. I've run on my stock Tenere wheels, I ran all the way down to 12 psi at KXCR once.
Yeah.
Now it was like super muddy and super rainy, and I wasn't getting wild, and we were just crawling through stuff.
Yeah.
So it was advantageous. If I was like wrapping it out and trying to go fast, I probably would have ripped a valve stem and popped the tire off the
Right.
bead. But we were going slow, so I was able to do that. I would, if you don't need to and the bike's riding okay and it's fine, yeah, leave your tire pressure. But if you get in a situation where you have a pump and it starts raining and you're struggling and you can't get through obstacles, by all means, like drop your tire pressure, get through the obstacle. If you want to pop it back up, you can pop it back up. It's not a big deal. You're not going to notice that big of a difference like on the road, whether at 20 psi or 35 psi. Like that could be the end of the world. But off road, it's going to be a complete night and day difference. If you're running like 15 or 20 psi versus like 40 psi, it's completely different.
Yeah, it's to me. I want to bring it up this for the exact reason that you said. It's like, look, if you're in a bad way and you want to get home or to some place before it gets dark, this may
Drop
be
the
your
pressure.
best, yeah, your best way to do it with the least amount of effort, and then get to a gas station and pump it up. Like, yeah, just don't get
Yeah.
wild.
I mean, if I'm dealing with here, if I'm dealing with, you know, an obstacle that's round like this, and I have, let's say I have a round tire, you know, like this, so a round on a round. I have this very small, tiny, little itty bitty contact point,
Yeah.
but now all of a sudden I'm trying to do this with my hands, but it's hard.
Makes for bad radio.
It does make for bad radio. I'm doing it with my hands. So I'm holding this pop can with my hand, and I'm trying to use my other hands. Like I have this round right here.
Yeah, I was like, I think of like a balloon or something like
Oh,
that.
here we go. So this is a tire with 40 psi in it, and this is your obstacle, right? Look at that little pin load that I have.
Right.
Like it doesn't take much, and this just deflects off there, right? But now all of a sudden I lower my tire pressure, right? And all of a sudden I've got this. And if you look,
Yeah,
and you can see
the
if you're
tire
watching,
conforms
the
to
tire
shape of the log,
conforms to
yeah.
the obstacle because there's less air in it, right? And whether it's a log on an angle or a rock or whatever, or I'm on the side of a hill, right? If those lugs can conform to whatever the shape is, I'm getting more surface area on whatever I want to do. And if it's wet, if it's clay and it's shitty out and I'm like struggling and it's 6 o'clock and it's getting dark and like I need to get to camp and I need to get out of this area, lower your stinking tire pressure. Just if you don't have a rim lock, don't lower it more than 20 in the rear because you will probably pop the bead. And if you do, don't start sitting there dumping the clutch and revving the piss out of it because you're definitely gonna like rip the valve stem and possibly blow the bead. So you want to do it, you got to be gentle.
Any other tips about getting unstuck from rocks, logs, mud, ruts?
I would say the biggest thing is, like I said before, momentum is your friend. So if you're sitting there and you're just like your rear tire is just sitting on the log and you're just spinning and spinning, back up, get off the bike, take a breather, get off your skid plate, get to the point where like your front tire is touching the log, and then like I said, you know, get back on the seat, sit on the seat, load it up, and then just, you know, pop that clutch and try and just launch over that. You need to really like use your momentum and use your inertia and your space to drive yourself over that obstacle, right? Give yourself a break. Don't keep doing the same thing and expecting a new result. And if you can't get over it, right, then just stop and have your friends pick up the rear end and push it over, or bring it back over the log and then turn around and get a running start and try and go over it again. It's once you're sitting there like rocking on a skid plate or driving your rear wheel and just spinning and spinning, you're probably not going to go anywhere at that point. Like you're most likely stuck. Like stop, get off your bike, take a minute, breathe, relax, look at it and say, how can I conquer this situation a little bit better without wasting my energy and damaging my bike and like digging huge ruts in the dirt for no reason. And if you have to pile some logs or sticks or like rocks in front of the obstacle and fill the hole, or give yourself a ramp on both sides, like take the 5 minutes and do it. Nobody's going to cry about it. Like,
Yeah, move rocks and extra sticks and crap out of the way. Get you a nice smooth path of travel. I like that. That's a good segue that I didn't actually have planned, but I think it makes sense. We should probably talk about good log crossing technique for folks, especially on adventure bikes, because that was a huge obstacle for me when I really got into this space.
yeah. I mean, there's multiple different ways you can do it. I mean, you can literally like roll up to it and just pop the front over it and just kind of rest on your skid plate, and then just have your friends just kind of pick the rear end up and help push you over it if you've got enough people. If it's a smaller log, you just kind of roll up to it nice and slow. You don't want to be fast. You don't want to try and like jump the thing. If it's a log under like 6 or 8 inches, and just kind of like come up slow to it, pull in the clutch, load your suspension a little bit with your body, right? Kind of throw your weight into the suspension and then just kind of pop your clutch and jump over it. You really want to commit, because once that rear tire hits that log, it's going to want to slam that front end down, right?
So you're saying you kind of use your weight to start to bounce the bike, and then as it
You
comes
kind of load
up,
the
give it
suspension.
clutch.
And as you load the suspension, you should be like, the front tire should be kind of like hitting that log, right? And then right when that front tire hits that log, you're going to give it a little bit of clutch, and you're utilizing the rebound of that front end to help pick the front end up over the obstacle. That's going to clear your skid plate, right? So you can pop up over that, and then you have to stay on the gas as the front end is in the air so you can get over your skid plate. And because once that rear tire hits, it's going to bam, it's going to stop in its tracks, and it's going to want to drop that front end down. So you're going to need to stay in it until that rear tire gets up and over, right? And then the bike lands. So that's a really, it takes a lot of timing and a lot of practice. We used to teach it in our classes, and most people don't get it overnight. It takes a while.
It took me a long time
to do that. Another thing is, like we talked about before, like just stack some stuff up in front of it, walk around a little bit, find some logs, find some sticks, make a ramp on the front, make a ramp on the back. You'll get over it. Like, you get enough stuff and you're going to get over it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. To me, it's nice to master the technique on a, what's called like a 6-inch diameter log or something like that.
Sure.
Really helps out. Yeah. When they start getting to be bigger than a foot in diameter, then that really means you got to have the technique, or like you said, you need to play it smart usually, because if they're wet or somebody's already knocked the bark off of it, it's nice and greasy. The consequences for bad technique are pretty high.
If it's short, if it's under 6 inches, you can go pretty fast. And if your rebound's quick enough and your suspension's good, you can kind of just pop it and your front end will absorb it and, give you some rebound and jump over it. But most people's bikes' suspensions aren't set up really well. So if you try and just like drive into it and expect the suspension's going to pop, you're just going to like absorb it in the front end, and the suspension's going to collapse and you're just going to fall over.
Yeah.
So you're better off like rolling up to it slowly, and then just like right when you get to it, as you come up to it and you weight your body, right? Let that front end compress. And then as that front end is like just about to rebound, you give it some clutch, and it just kind of like hops right over it. It takes that's a lot of practice, and I wouldn't do it on your own. I would, go to a class and have somebody teach you how to do that, because there's a lot of timing involved.
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice to master that. And you and I took for granted, we probably should have talked about it. If you can cross the log at 90 degrees, you want to. The steeper that, or
square it up.
Sharper that angle gets, the messier it gets if you make a mistake.
And if it's wet, it's going to be even harder.
Yeah, that back wheel.
Anytime you hit a wet log, even like 10 degrees off, you're just going to deflect.
Yeah, so keep that stuff in mind for sure. What can people do to get better trail vision and good line selection, especially novice and intermediate adventure riders?
I mean, I think part of this is understanding your body and the bike and how you can manipulate the bike. So it comes back down to those fundamentals of like understanding how your weight impacts the bike and how your body position on the bike impacts how it handles, right? Because most people can only look forward to the speed that they understand that they can go, right? So a lot of fearful people are looking right down at the ground in front of them or at like the next immediate obstacle, versus like the faster guys are looking through the next 4 or 5 obstacles, kind of knowing what's coming up next and kind of pre-planning, all right, I can hit this in this way, and then I can hit this way, and I can hit that X way. So I'd say you first need to focus on the fundamentals and understanding your bike and your body and how you can manipulate the bike. And then you can start understanding like where to look, because they're like, okay, I can confidently come into this turn and make this sharp right left turn, and then make this sharp left turn, and then go straight and then go over that log.
So speed and vision come with we'll say building an encyclopedia in your mind of all the different obstacles that you've crossed before.
Yeah, because you can't, like, if you can't even understand how to turn the bike, like, how are you going to understand the next 3 turns that also have a log down, that also have, I don't know, like sand whoops that you've never seen before? Like, you're not going to, if you can't make it through the first one, you're not going to make it through the next ones if you're not comfortable. So I would say bike fundamentals, speed comes with fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yep. Like accuracy is more important than speed, because speed comes with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna get that over time. Don't be impatient and try and get speed because you're just gonna run into a tree.
Yeah, it seems like saddle time is like the short answer for how to get better trail vision to look
I
up
mean,
the
even this
trail.
weekend, like this weekend, I was riding sand in Michigan and I felt like I didn't know how to ride. And I made a couple adjustments, and one of it was my body position. I was not far enough over the front end of that Triumph. So my front end was just not
Mm,
biting in the turns. And I was trying to come in these really tight sand turns. And I was doing what I would do on my two stroke, which I would use the rear brake and I would swing the rear end of turns and then drive out of the turns with the gas. And the Triumph
yeah,
four stroke does not want to do that. The Triumph four stroke wanted me to lean way over the front end. Like my head was like kissing the front fender, right?
wow,
To keep weight on that front tire. And then I was actually coming into the turns braking with almost all front brake. And then loading the front end with my body. So my body was over the front end. I'm braking. I'm just driving weight into that front end and I could steer. And I would come in the turn and just
yeah,
and the rear end would just follow because now all my weight's over the front. The rear was light, so I could just come into the turn. The rear end would drive, and I'd just kind of crack a little bit of gas, and the rear end would swing around, and I would just do this like dance of the front end diving into where I wanted it, and the rear end kind of swinging around the trees. But it took me like all day to
yeah,
get to that point. I was not like doing well at all that whole first day. The second day it finally like started to click. But I needed 20 miles of seat time to kind of adjust myself and adjust my body and make some suspension adjustments, a lot of suspension adjustments actually, to get that chassis where I wanted. In the morning, I couldn't even barely roll the whoops, right? No matter what speed I went, whether I was going slow or fast, it didn't want to take them. I felt like I was running into them. And by the evening of the next day, with the suspension adjustments and the body adjustments I made, I was just completely skipping whoops or doubling the whoops in the woods, which I mean, these whoops in the Michigan woods are like,
yeah. I hear it's quite the stuff. So I'm
yeah,
looking forward to seeing it someday.
you need to.
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes are? I know we've kind of touched on some biggest mistakes that novice and intermediate ADV riders make as far as riding skills, techniques.
I think they try and do too much too fast, and they
Mm.
don't, they don't, they don't find a crew to like go with them that's going to push them a little bit. They kind of stay in their like, they stay in their comfort zone a little too much. That's kind of counteractive, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
it's
kind
like
of said
I
the
hear
opposite thing.
both
It
conditions
was
are
kind of,
happening.
well, because I see both things depending on who I'm with,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah.
So I see some guys that try and just go like too much too fast, but they end up figuring it out. But they damage a lot of stuff along the
Hmm.
way, mostly just destroying bikes, which I was one of those guys. And I see other guys that just kind of like never leave their comfort zone and they expect to get better without actually putting in any seat time.
Hmm.
They want a lot of people want they want the like adventure touring setup, but they also want the bike to be able to ride in hard situations, and those are like kind of challenging to get both.
It's a
Like
tough compromise.
you can't have this like 80/20 street tire bias tire with a ton of gear loaded up, and then you've never done the suspension, so it's completely like sagged out and not sprung properly, and you're running stock gearing and stock springs and stock valving, and then you all of a sudden want to follow me through the trails and I'm on like mooses and
Hmm.
I'm re-geared and I'm like doing crazy stuff, and you're like, why can't I do this? I'm like, well, because A, your bike's not set up for it, and B, you haven't put in the seat time to like build the fundamentals, right? So the biggest thing I think is just like fundamentals.
Yeah, I think because I am definitely guilty of this, as I've in training recently been reminded of like, hey, yeah, I can see that there are things that I have spent a lot of time practicing and I'm very comfortable with them, and there are other things I'm like, yep, haven't done this in a long time. I suck at this, and I
Yeah.
think people got to remember that no, it's worth your time to goof around in the driveway in the backyard for a couple hours.
But we did the training classes for what it was like 3.5 seasons, right? And it was
Mm.
great. I mean, it pounded a lot of stuff into my head, and it definitely made me a better rider, and it made me think about a lot of things that I hadn't thought about and how to break it down and how to interpret it. What was I doing? Why was I doing? Like there was some stuff about me that I was like, oh, I'm totally doing this wrong, and this is why I'm doing it wrong, and I had to like
Mm.
re teach myself stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think the best thing that anybody can do is just ride more.
Yeah. I like that. Anything else for the listeners before we shut it down, sir?
No, man. When are you going to come out to Michigan and ride?
Hopefully soon, but life is very complicated on the backside of the stage here. Very complicated.
It always is.
So, anything else, sir?
No, man. We're good.
All right. We'll catch the listeners down the road.